Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to another edition of Movie Goodness here on the KB Radio Network. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, your eyes did not deceive you. You read it right. It wasn't a typo. The title of this episode, I watched The Godfather for the very first time. I know it's crazy. It is crazy. And I really, honestly, didn't realize that I have not watched The Godfather. I've seen bits and pieces of it throughout my life, you know. Now, full disclosure, the movie came out, 7 years before I was born. So I wasn't there to experience the phenomenon. So when I got of age, at least old enough to turn on the TV, Godfather was the last thing on my mind. And I must say, I was pleasantly surprised. There are a couple of reasons why I finally decided to sit down and watch it from beginning to end. About 2 or 3 days ago, I sat down and I watched it. Number one, I finished watching The Offer, the limited television series that's on Paramount Plus, which is a show based on the making of The Godfather. And I loved that show. It was so well done. And you couldn't, if you enjoyed the show, you had no choice but to watch The Godfather after. It was just, I like, man, what's the end result of this? Of all this that took place behind the scenes? I want to see the film if you had never seen it. And if you had seen it, I'm pretty sure you probably want to watch it again, sit down and watch it again. And that's what I did. But another reason why I felt I had to sit down and watch it, we lost a legend. We lost an absolute legend on the 6th of July. And that was the great James Caan, who co-starred in The Godfather. And I figured this would be two birds in one stone type of situation. We can celebrate the life of James Caan, and as well as review a film that a lot of people, and I mean a lot, have considered the greatest film of all time. A masterpiece. This is stuff that I heard throughout time, and I never understood it because I never sat down and watched it. Like I said, I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've seen a scene here, a scene there. Like, I've seen enough of it that if you have a conversation about The Godfather around me, I can join in. But never to the point where I actually watched it from beginning to end and see it in its totality. So I did it. And honestly, people, I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed, yet super happy that I watched it now for the first time. And reason being, and I'm going out of order of how I have my notes to discuss this episode, but I'm so excited because you know how it is when you see something for the first time, something brand new, and you feel like you've been a part of some type of event, some type of life-changing phenomenon. That's how I felt. Like when you went to go see, and we just talking in movie terms here, like when you went to the theater to go see Jaws for the first time, which once again, I didn't get that experience. That the movie came out before I was born, but I've read about seeing, specials about the phenomenon surrounding Jaws, or the phenomenon watching Star Wars in the theaters for the first time, or in my history, in my time on Earth, going to see Batman, the 1989 Batman for the first time, the phenomenon surrounding that, and You know, it's that what they call it, that you had to be there moments. You know, and that's what I got. You know, the going to see Jurassic Park for the first time, or going to see Titanic for the first time. You know, these big movies, or being in the theater for Avengers Endgame, experiencing that opening night, you know, in the theater with the crowds and everybody cheering and clapping and crying, all that, those emotions you get for seeing it for the first time with somebody. And this is a film that I just didn't connect to. It for a number of reasons. One, I'm not Italian. You know, two, I don't know anything about the mob and all that gangster movies and stuff. That just wasn't my bag. And that doesn't mean that I automatically said, "Oh no, it's a poo movie," or you know, I don't get why people like it or not. You know, it just wasn't my bag. It's like Lawrence of Arabia. I never seen Lawrence of Arabia, but it's something that I do want to see. Once again, I've seen bits and pieces of it on TV at times, but I never actually sat down and watched it. Look, when I got of age to really get into movies and wanted to watch movies, it had to be something that piqued my interest, and it had to be something to grab my attention. I have a very, very, very short attention span, so me being able to sit there for 2 hours and you grab my attention is a feat. 3 hours, you really accomplished something. And this movie is a 3-hour long movie. And I've known that my whole life. And I utterly refuse to sit down and watch 3-hour long movies when I was growing up. Because I felt I could do something better with my time with those 3 hours. You know, it didn't matter what the movie was. I did not want to sit there for 3 hours. Now I'm of the age it doesn't bother me. Now I will sit down for 4 hours if it need be. I did for Justice League, you know, Zack Snyder's Justice League. That was 4 hours? Yeah, it was about 4 hours, wasn't it? I don't even remember, but it was a long movie, and it didn't bother me. It didn't bother me in the least bit. You know, we in the age now of binge watching. We'll binge watch a show, an entire season of a show, all weekend. So sitting down and being captivated for 3 hours is a small feat now. Now it ain't nothing. Now that's nothing to me. And that's what I did the other night. And man, to see James Caan in this movie, who once again passed away on July the 6th at the age of 82. Well, my dad would have been 82 this year, but he was born the same year as my dad in 1940. And James Caan is one of my favorite actors growing up. I enjoyed James Caan because I loved it. He was just macho. You know what I'm saying? I always saw him as this macho man, because everything he was in, he was just machismo, man. He just eked it on whatever the role was. I don't care if it was Elf. He just eked man. You know, this brooding Italian guy, and I was shocked, amazed, and I just found this out after he passed away. James Caan is not Italian. James Caan is Jewish, and it blew my mind. Because you couldn't tell me that by watching Godfather, by watching Mickey Blue Eyes and stuff like that. I my whole life I thought the man was Italian, and voila, he's Jewish. That just adds to the brilliance of his acting. That just like Al Pacino. For a good portion of my life, I thought Al Pacino was Cuban, because of the first thing I ever saw him in was Scarface. I thought he was Cuban, and until somebody told me what. I'm like, you serious? Until I saw him in something else. It was something else I saw, and it really confirmed it. I saw him in an interview or something. But it was like, I like, wait, he's not Cuban. But that just adds to the brilliance of their ability, their acting ability. And it was sad, to lose such a legend. He lived a full life, but it's still sad to see that fella go on to the great beyond. Despite the fact that he was a diehard Donald Trump supporter, because he considered himself an ultra conservative. Despite all that, I'm not gonna look at his personal life, but his his professional career, I'm a big fan of. I'm learning to put a partition between personal and professional, because I'm a big fan of a lot of artists, whether it's music or television, films, and stuff like that. And when you really dig deep into people's personal life, you get crushed. It's like that old saying, never meet your heroes, because you're going to be disappointed in the end. It's like that. So I expect that from a lot of people. And I've learned that with a lot of people that I admire, at least their work that I admire. And when I find out about them, about their personal lives, it's like, man, I can't rock with him. And I can't rock with her, And so I just stick firmly with their professional careers, so I won't be hurt. But like I said, he starred in so many films that I am a big fan of, that I consider some of my faves that I go to every now and then. Going back, Brian's Song, which is a great film. If you ever seen it, it's a TV movie based on a true story. Brian's Song will make you cry. Of course, The Godfather, The Gambler, Rollerball, the original one. That was good. Not that remake from a few years ago that was horrible, but he was in that. Thief, Alien Nation, Dick Tracy, Honeymoon in Vegas, Eraser, Bulletproof, like I said, Mickey Blue Eyes, Way of the Gun, Elf, and what he's most known for, and I think is one of my favorites, if not favorite, from James Caan. And I was considering doing that for an episode, dedicated to him, but I could not talk about The Godfather. But my favorite of his film, is Misery. Misery is, once again, to have James Caan in that film, and he's just bed stricken. He he can't move, and he still carries that film along with Kathy Bates. Is nothing short of amazing. It was, frightening too, very frightening, very disturbing. But yeah, he will be missed. I truly enjoyed his work. Was a big fan of all his films, and he will be missed. R.I.P. to James Caan. And yeah, man, that The Godfather. Well, not so much The Godfather, but The Offer. And I want to talk about The Offer a little bit before we go into our review of The Godfather. The Offer, if you haven't seen this show, if you don't have Paramount Plus, I do recommend you get that app. It is streaming app. It's a good app, because you have a lot of stuff on there. It's a lot of good, from Paramount. In this show, I immediately gravitated to, because I'm into behind the scenes stuff. Of course, I'm a movie buff. And I wanted to watch this because I'm a fan of all the actors and the creative behind the scenes. and I was not disappointed. It was so well done, and I think it was robbed with the Emmy nominations that came out the other day. I don't think it got one nomination. And Matthew Good as Bob Evans is highway robbery. He didn't get nominated. Highway robbery. He didn't get nominated. I mean, that was I'll have to go and actually, because I looked over the list about 3 or 4 times, because it was 2 different shows that I didn't see on the list, and I got upset. But I have to go over it again. Maybe I missed something. But The Offer and The Boys were 2 shows that I didn't see nominated for anything at this year's Emmys. And I can't get it. I don't understand it. That's blasphemy, man. That is blasphemy. Some of the best performances I've seen this year came from those 2 shows on television. But I digress. But the show does such a good job of showing how hard it was to make this film. How difficult it was for Francis Ford Coppola to get everything he wanted. He had to fight for everything. He had to fight for the actors he wanted. He had to fight for the locations. He had to fight for against the studio with the budget. I mean, he had to fight every step of the way. And for this film to turn out the way that it did is nothing short of a miracle. And that just got me like, man, I gotta watch this movie. And it wasn't to the end of that show, because it's a limited series, of course. It ain't like it gonna have 4 or 5 seasons of it, but it was 10 episodes. And at the end of it, I'm like, I gotta watch this movie. I really gotta watch this movie. And so I sat down one day. Actually, it was the day after. It was the day after James Caan passed away. And I said, you know what? There's no time like the present. Let me sit down and watch this movie that everybody is squawking about. Everybody is claiming it's a masterpiece. Everybody says, oh, it's the greatest movie of all time, and blah, blah, blah. This, that. I just couldn't believe that. Honestly, because I'm so into movies, I always see flaws. Even when I grade movies on here and I give movies A's and all that stuff, I still see flaws. And I tell you the flaws. I tell you the flaws that I've noticed that I don't agree with. And I honestly don't think there's a movie that is flawless. There's no such thing. You know? And especially after I watched that show, I'm like, no. I know this movie it's no way. Boy, was I wrong. Was I wrong? My God in heaven. Another thing, the one thing that's embarrassing about not having seen The Godfather is the fact that I consider myself a movie buff, a movie lover, and somebody who reviews films for a living. Who discuss movies for a living. And I've never thought to sit down and actually watch The Godfather. And I sat down and watched this movie. When I did sit down and watch this movie, I got a new perspective on film. A new outlook on how movies not only are made, but just details. And it was so many details that Francis Ford Coppola put in this movie, showcased in this movie so subtly, and it's perfect. It's perfect in every sense of the word. To the point, if you don't know, I always wanted to be a filmmaker. I always wanted to direct, and it made me sit back and really say, man, I'm glad I did make movies. I think God had a reason for why I never accomplished that goal, because I would have failed. And I don't think I was mentally mature enough to make a film like this. Now, granted, I'm not aiming, or at least my goal was never to aim to be a Oscar nominated director, or thought provoking films and stuff. I'm an action nut, so I always wanted to make action movies or comedies and stuff like that. Fingers crossed, still may be a possibility, but I never thought of a film like this. And the reason I feel like I couldn't make a film like this, there's no way I would have paid so much attention to the casting, the lighting, the art design, the art design, and the camera angles and lighting, and putting certain props in certain positions and stuff that I learned researching this film. Because that's another thing I did. For the first time, I actually researched this movie before I watched the movie. Because I couldn't have been spoiled, because I already knew how the movie ended and everything. And I knew a majority of the film. I just never sat down and watched it from beginning to end. I've seen a scene here, scene there, and all this other stuff, but I never sat down and watched it from the very beginning all the way straight through. And so doing it from that perspective, I had seen this from a different angle, if that makes any sense. I wasn't looking at it as film critic Kevin Reed. I was looking at it as just somebody who watched the movie, and that's a rarity for me. I know a lot of you out there, y'all can sit down and watch movies normally, but I can't. I don't possess that gene. I always sit down and I watch movies no matter what it is. It can be a blockbuster film or an indie film or a Marvel movie, whatever, a TV show. It doesn't matter. I'm always dissecting it, looking at it from the behind the scenes aspect, because that's my ambition. So I never get to enjoy movies as a fan. It's very rare. Very, very rare. So when I tried this method, I was able to watch this movie just as a moviegoer. And it felt so good, because I don't get to do that, because of my mental state. I don't know if this is a mental health issue or not, but I'll define it as one. I cannot watch movies normally. I can sit down and enjoy them and love them and have all the fun with them, but I'm still dissecting it in my head. That's why I talk about them so much, because that's a way to relieve the stress of it. But yeah, so it was like taking my kids and showing them old films from when I grew up, and I wanted them to experience it for the first time and watch it for the first time. Sometimes it works, and sometimes they check out in the first 5 minutes, because it just isn't their jams. But I got that feeling, and I haven't had that feeling in so long, to experience something for the very first time. So let's jump right into it. And I don't even know, I went over it, I wrote notes, I ran over it in my head a million times on how to review this film, and quite honestly, I don't know how. I don't know how, because I want to break down this film bit by bit, but we'll be here until next Thursday, going bit by bit on this movie, because there's so much to talk about, because there's so much detail in every frame of this film. So let's get into it. My review of a masterpiece, of arguably not one of, but the greatest movie ever made, 1972's The Godfather. I never thought in my life that I would ever lay eyes on the actual painting of the Mona Lisa, that I would actually be able to see or go to Machu Picchu, or be able to see the 16th Chapel, and all these wonders of the world. I never thought I would lay eyes on them in person. Now, it's possible I could see these places and see these things that are considered masterpieces or just great wonders. So I never really had a inclination to or desire to see these things, until I saw this movie. I honestly, because I laid eyes on a masterpiece, and it only took 50 years. This is the 50th year anniversary of The Godfather. Now, it only took me 43 of those 50, but it took that long for me to actually sit down and watch this movie from start to finish. And I don't know why, other than the fact that I was immature. And now that I am a mature young man, old man, according to my kids, I appreciate this film to the highest. This is great. This is an amazing film. It feels good to have seen it for a first time, to experience it for a first time, and actually get that feeling that I was talking about earlier. I can't put into words how perfectly executed this movie is. I'm gonna reiterate. There are great movies that have been made. There are great movies that have been released that we've watched that hands down are our favorites. But deep down, we can honestly say, well, there was a part in here they probably could have did without, a scene here that really wasn't that good, but the rest of the movie was so good it overshadows that. It doesn't even affect it. Or a character that didn't need to be in the film, so they could have omitted him, but at the same time the movie was great. This is the first movie I've ever watched in my life that I can sit down and honestly tell y'all people that this is a masterpiece of perfection. Y'all heard me, for all my listeners who repeatedly continue to support me, and I honestly, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate it. Y'all hear me all the time talk about movies, and especially if it's a movie I like. I'm like, oh man, this was perfect. This was great. This was a masterpiece. This is the greatest movie ever. I throw those out so much, and I noticed it, and I really picked up on it. But my excitement get the best of me at times, and after I watch this, I want to go back and tell all y'all that I was wrong. There's only one. There's only one masterpiece. I can't do that no more, because I'm lying. I'm lying to y'all. All those movies that I give A's. I stand by those grades. But there's a few A+ I gave that I'll probably have to go back and change to I got to take the plus off and just give you my A, because this is an A+. I'm not even gonna wait to the end to give my grade. It doesn't make sense. I mean, this is a A+ 100 movie. I cannot believe they pulled this movie off. I cannot believe the level of detail in this movie. The level. Have you ever thought you can watch a film, and this is for all you who are film buffs, lovers who study movies, who study film, who deeply rooted in movies. Have you ever witnessed a film? Now I'm talking to you like y'all never seen The Godfather. I'm pretty sure I'm the last man on earth to have ever watched The Godfather. Everybody else, I'm pretty sure, have watched The Godfather. It's 50 years. And this is the greatest movie of all time. And that is not a lie. There is no lie told there. Have you ever seen a movie execute every level to perfection? Let's start it off. Let me list it down for you. Let's start with the director, Francis Ford Coppola. I don't know. I'm not the greatest fan of Francis Ford Coppola. At least I wasn't, because I never really sat down and appreciated his movies like this. I like some of his films. He doesn't have a large catalog, but once again, I didn't watch them all. I didn't watch all of this film, which lets you know I didn't watch Godfather Part 2, which I will. I started to watch it the other night after I finished this one, but I wasn't prepared for another 3 hours. I wasn't prepared for that. It was late, and so I'm going to go back and watch Part 2. Part 3, I always heard that Part 3 is the weaker of the trilogy, but I'm still gonna watch it. Once again, I've seen all three in pieces. I've seen pieces of them all, but I have not sat down and watched them throughout. But anyways, I love Bram Stoker's Dracula. I love that movie with Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder, Anthony Hopkins, Keanu Reeves, who was miscast. But I love that movie, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Peggy Sue Got Married. I like that. Yeah, but I've never been a Francis Ford Coppola guy, and man, I missed it. It went over my head with this dude. This is a great film. He directed this movie perfectly. You know how many actors are in this movie? How much is going on? And you have to wrangle all this up. Let me give you a little backstory about how Francis Ford Coppola came to make this movie. First and foremost, Paramount wanted one of their hot directors of the time to make this movie. They went to everybody in Hollywood, every hot director in Hollywood, and all of them turned it down. So after going through 20 or 30 different directors, they couldn't get to direct this film. Finally, they crawled to Francis Ford Coppola, who graciously declined. Yeah, Francis Ford Coppola declined to direct twice. They went to him twice, and he said no. And finally, he read the book. I don't know if they told him, look, just read the book, and we're going to come back and ask you again. I think that's how it went. I cannot find that nowhere. I know in the show it was kind of depicted like that on The Offer, but he read the book, and he accepted. He found something. It was something in the story. He loved the story, and he was like, because at first the reason he didn't want to direct it, he didn't want to make a gangster movie. He didn't want to make a violent, standard gangster movie. So he found a story about family, and he wanted to show that story. And did he? It's a beautiful story about family. That's strip away the skin and the meat and all that and the bones. This film is about family. And Francis Ford Coppola did a outstanding. This is a masterclass for all you would-be directors. filmmakers, this is a master class in filmmaking. Sitting down watching this movie, I learned so much. And part of me, as I said before, I'm glad I didn't watch it when I was younger, because I wouldn't have appreciated it. And I'm mad that I waited so long, because maybe I could have learned a little more and kicked off my film career. But at the same time, I don't think I was mature enough for it. But right now, at this stage of my life, I can appreciate it, which I did. And I learned so much from watching this film. I actually could see him directing this movie. And I think maybe the show helped me. I think it was The Offer that helped me appreciate this film, because I seen I can't remember the actor's name who portrayed Francis Ford Coppola on the show, but I could picture Francis Ford Coppola directing these scenes while I was watching the movie, and I was like, oh man, I could see, I know what he was telling the actors, I know what he was telling the DP, I know what was going on, but it just had a different feel. And so, man, Francis Ford Coppola, amazing. Can't wait to watch the rest of them. And I know this sounds funny, especially for all of you who have seen this movie multiple times throughout the years, that you listening to this fool reviewing this film like it's the first time. Well, if you're just joining us, this is the first time that I've watched The Godfather. The very first time I watched it was a couple of days ago. And so moving on, our actors: Marlon Brando, Al Pacino, James Caan, who we just lost, Robert Duvall, Diane Keaton. So, I mean, the list goes on. But let's get the main stars here. Marlon Brando. What can I say? What can I say about Marlon Brando that has not been said throughout time? One of the greatest actors of all time. And he did it here. Once again, had a different appreciation of watching film, of watching actors act. It was like watching theater in a way. Yeah, I noticed all the nuances. I noticed all the facial expressions, the little subtleness in speech patterns. This is what Marlon Brando was doing. Marlon Brando never raised his voice. He's the Don. He's the Godfather. Never raised his voice, never was angry, never was boisterous and all this here. He was subtle and reserved. He was a leader, you know, and he carried this movie, and he's only in the movie. This is a 3-hour movie, and Marlon Brando is in this movie 20 minutes maybe. I'm being nice here. I didn't count it. But he wasn't in the movie much. But I really, really, honestly enjoyed his performance and what he was doing with this character. Because it could have in the hands of somebody else, in the hands of and I hate to say it like this, but a lesser actor, it could have been a caricature of the Don. And for some strange reason, because the Don is not a good guy. He's a criminal. You know, he's the head of a criminal of a crime family. But you love him. You know, you have respect for him, and that's you felt it. It felt real. The man won Best Picture at the Academy Awards that year. He declined it. And sent a Native American woman or an indigenous woman to the Academy Awards ceremony to give a speech at that time. And I remember them talking about it. Like I said, I wasn't born around that time, so I didn't see it, but I remember hearing about it. But he did win Best Actor, which is crazy because, like I said, he's only in the movie about maybe 30 minutes. I'm gonna give him 30. You know, Al Pacino is really the star. This is Michael's story. This is Al Pacino, and backstory about Al Pacino. Well, I didn't give you backstory about Marlon Brando at the time. Marlon Brando, the studio didn't want him. The studio did not want to work with Marlon Brando because he has a reputation for being difficult to work with, which is accurate. He is very difficult to work with, and this was one of the many fights that Francis Ford Coppola had to go at it with with Paramount. So he did end up winning that fight. Speaking of winning a fight, he had to fight for Al Pacino. The studio was dead set on not casting Al Pacino. That they did not want Al Pacino in this role. Al Pacino, he's a short guy, dark hair. I mean, he's not the the typical Hollywood leading man look. So they didn't want that. They wanted somebody else for the role. But once again, Francis Ford Coppola knew who he wanted for this role, who he needed for this role, and it was Al Pacino. Al Pacino at the time. Yeah, we know him now. Tony Montana, from Scarface. We know him from Heat. We know him from A Scent of a Woman. We know him from all these movies, all these classics. But around that time, he was basically an unknown. So this is a lot. You're pretty much the lead, even though Marlon Brando is gets top billing, but it's really Al Pacino's movie. And so he had to carry it, and he did. Al Pacino's portrayal of Michael was a perfect mix of Marlon Brando's Vito, who is reserved, soft-spoken, but demands respect, and James Caan's Sonny, who is a hothead, who very emotional, just a hothead, and Michael is the blending of the two, and Al Pacino played it perfectly. He's another one. Didn't raise his voice. Never raised his voice. I think maybe once or twice he raised his voice, and that was it. When he spoke, that was it. It was a masterclass in acting. Now, the gentleman who did raise his voice is the young man who we're dedicating this episode to, James Caan. His portrayal as Sonny, the hothead. And as watching this movie, I went into this movie knowing he wasn't Italian. Now, I had just found out he wasn't Italian when I watched this movie, and as I'm watching it, I really started questioning. I'm like, are they sure? Are they sure he's not? I mean, the dude was so convincing, so good as Sonny. And when he died, when they ambushed him, that was like the worst death in the movie. I mean, they tore him up. I mean, they turned him into Swiss cheese. And it was brutal. I actually got choked up, man. I was like, oh my God, not Sonny. And it's a 50-year-old movie, and I'm sitting there like, no. It was brutal. Oh my God, all the interworkings of the mob, the five families and the fighting and with them and going to war, and it was just outstanding. It was outstanding. The way it was written, directed, and acted, it was just perfect. It was just perfect. One of the details in my notes here, one of the details that I've noticed is how this film, every death, and there's a lot, there's a lot of deaths in this movie, and each and every one is different. There's the detail. You hear me saying that a lot this episode. There's the detail in the deaths. Every death in this film has its own distinct signature. With Luca Brasi, I think that's how you pronounce it, how he died with being stabbed in the hand and strangled. I mentioned Sonny, how he was ambushed and just riddled with, I think, over 100 and something bullets. Carlos, how when he was strangled, how he kicked out the glass, out, the windshield, and oh my God, I just had the one who the ones who was shot up in the elevator, and stuff like it. It's just no death, no murder was the same. No murder was the same. It was Pablo, how he was shot 3 times in the head and sitting in the car. The police chief that was shot in the throat, then shot in the head. It was like every death was different. But the reason Francis Ford Coppola did it that way, he wanted every death to have an impact, and he wanted you to remember it. And that's how I remember it. If everybody died the same, if everybody gets shot in the forehead, all 40 people in the movie that get shot in the forehead, you'd never think about, when such and such died in early on in the movie, or he got shot in the head. You never you can't distinguish which is which. The way this was done, you can distinguish which is which. And it has a bigger impact, and I appreciate that so much. Look, I can't go too much in depth with it because I feel myself doing it. But this film, this film went on to have multiple nominations. It at the 45th Academy Awards, like I said, it won for Best Actor for Marlon Brando. It also won Best Picture and Best Adapted Screenplay. It was nominated for 7 other Academy Awards. Al Pacino, James Caan, and Robert Duvall was nominated for Best Supporting Actor, which did the film so much. Did them so much harm because they canceled each other out. All 3 of them were in the same category, and all 3 of them lost because they all split the votes. Well, not split, 3-way split the votes, so they lost. But all of them deserve it. Francis Ford Coppola lost for Best Director, which is a crime. But I think everybody can go back in retrospect and feel it needs to be changed. But and no disrespect to whoever won that year, but this is the greatest movie of all times. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The Godfather is regarded as one of the greatest and most influential movies ever made, as well as a landmark in the gangster genre. Of course, this film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry of the Library of Congress in 1990, and it was deemed culturally and historically significant and is ranked the 2nd greatest film in American cinema. Want to know what number 1 was? Citizen Kane, another film that I've never watched. I actually tried watching Citizen Kane a few years back. I guess I could go back and try it again, but I tried to watch Citizen Kane and it didn't catch me then. And so I'm gonna try it now with a more mature quotations mind and see if I agree, but I don't at this point. And of course, it had 2 sequels: Godfather Part 2 and Godfather Part 3. The film was made for $7 million and it grossed $291 million worldwide. I don't know what those numbers will be adjusted to inflation, but pretty sure it'll be one of the highest grossing of all time. I honestly can say that I have regrets. I do have regrets that I didn't watch it years ago, but you know, I know me. I know me. I wouldn't feel the way I feel about this movie now. You know, that's why when I review a film on here, I'll have to rewatch them, especially if it's an older film. I have to rewatch them because those are two different people. Kevin Reed from 1990 is different from Kevin Reed of 2022. I guess that's a good thing. Actually, if you want to be honest with you, Kevin Reed from 2021 is different from the Kevin Reed of 2022. So I have to go back and watch pretty much everything in my life. But yeah, but it felt so good. It really did. It felt so good to sit down and watch it. I was proud. I felt proud. You know, it's crazy for a movie. For a movie to make you feel that way, to make you feel so much joy, even though there's, you know what, I'm sorry, I lied again, because every film I said had a flaw, and I made the statement that this film had none. It do have one, actually two. There was a scene when Sonny was at the table talking to the family, and he dropped the dreaded N-word, talking about my peoples, and it was quick. He said it quick, and that was the end of that. And then it was another scene when the five families were meeting up, and they were talking about the drug trade, and they're like, well, we'll just give it to the coloreds, you know, let them fight over it, and you know, they ain't nothing but animals anyway, something to that effect. But yeah, that those are only two flaws I have, because there ain't no black people in this movie, but we are shot it out, but never in a good way. Never in a good way. So if I had a flaw, those would be my two flaws. But I'm only joking. The movie is still perfect, but I just hate. I was like, man, that was kind of offensive. That was offensive in 1972. It's still offensive. You know, that still hurts. But I mean, I know that's how they feel. Trust me, I've been around Italians. I know. But in any event, yes, this is an A+ 100. When they say the greatest film of all time, this is the greatest film of all time. I've literally locked in on this movie, and I sat there for 3 hours, and I didn't budge. I think I blinked maybe 5 times. I honestly was in awe of this masterpiece, and happy 50th anniversary to this film, and also R.I.P. to James Caan. Gonna miss you. But yes, man, look, I know it was my first time. How about you? I'm pretty sure you've seen The Godfather. Do you consider it the greatest film of all time? I do. It's not even a question at this point. I've seen a lot of films, and I've never seen a film like this to impact me the way that it has. And look, it's been a struggle for the last hour to try to temper my feelings, because I have so much joy surrounding this film. You just have no idea. And this movie doesn't culturally impact me at all. But it just, something about it. It is so perfect. It is perfect. But hey, look, that's my opinion. Films are subjective. Everybody has their opinion. I would like to know yours. let me know by emailing the show at kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. Let me know on social media. Look up the KB Radio Network on all social media platforms. Regarding your listening platforms, wherever you are listening to this show at right now, click on them 5 stars for the ratings and leave a review. It helps the show out tremendously. You have no earthly idea. Everybody, The Godfather. The Godfather. It took me 43 years, but I watched it. So, hey, it's better late than never. Better late than never. I'm glad that I experienced this masterpiece. So, if you're like me and you never seen The Godfather, look, don't feel bad. You're not the only one. I'm like, man, I can't believe that I didn't watch this movie when I did, man. I need to grow up. I should have grew up a long time ago. You know, God, I'm a late bloomer. But anyways, I enjoyed it, man. Check it out. It's on Paramount Plus right now. Check it out. Or wherever. I don't know where else is at. Or just go buy the physical media. Do anybody ever buy physical media anymore? And I'm talking physical media about DVDs or Blu-rays and stuff like that. I can't tell you the last time I bought a Blu-ray. When was the last time I bought a Blu-ray? Jeez Louise, it's been a minute. But I know people that still do. I just haven't. I think since they closed at Circuit City. We used to have a Circuit City down here. That's how long it's been. For anybody who lives in the New Orleans area and know when that Circuit City closed. I think that was the last time I bought a Blu-ray. Yeah, it's been a while. But anywho's, everybody, look, it's been a joy to talk to you today. And so excited, man. I had to tell y'all. I was so happy to tell y'all that I finally watched The Godfather. I remember years ago, real quick before we go, me and a couple of friends, we were sitting around talking, and one of them brought up The Godfather, and they were like, man, I think they were talking about a certain scene, and I did see that scene they were talking about, and but I wanted to be part of the conversation so bad, and they kept talking about the rest of the movie. I was like, you know what, I'm gonna be honest with you, this is unpopular. I didn't too much care for The Godfather. And they all just looked at me with disgust. They looked at me like I just slapped their mamas. I mean, they looked at me like, what? Are you even human? You know what I'm saying? It was. So I'm going to be happy to inform them. If they're listening, I'm letting y'all. Yeah, I finally watched it. And I get it. And I apologize for offending you. Y'all. But anyways, everybody, it was an honor, privilege, and joy to talk to y'all today. Want you all to know I love you. Continue to love one another. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.